Well, hello, everyone. We are delighted to welcome you to the 2023 One Finance World Conference. It's an exciting event that promises a deep dive into the realm of finance and fintech. And over these two transformative days, we will explore, learn, and share insights that will certainly shape the industry's future. The conference serves as a global platform where pioneers, thought leaders, and innovators do come together. The knowledge exchanged and relationships forged here will certainly create ripples across the financial landscape. We thank you and welcome you to One Finance World. And now it is a great pleasure for me to introduce David Roberson. He is the CEO of Rose Ryan, and he will be discussing seeking funding when you have a small network. So, David, I hand over to you.
Thanks so much, James. And it's a pleasure to be here today. What I want to talk about today is looking for funding when you don't have people knocking on your door. A small network, a group of folks that you've worked with that may not have the funds for the next round you need to do. So how do you find them? What do you do? And so on. That's the main focus of my topic. A little bit about me. As James said, I'm CEO of Rose Ryan. We're owned by ZRG, which is a global, talent firm. Rose Ryan is Silicon Valley based, focused on finance and accounting, providing expertise to clients of all sizes, and from very early stage to very public companies at the end. I've been on boards of 7 different public companies and been an advisor to many privately held companies, including startups, and 30 years of experience in technology working with primarily HP and Hitachi Data Systems. And along the way, I've either sold or acquired. I've been acquired and I've sold both, more than 20 companies. And I mentor a diverse group of folks in various disciplines, from recent college grads up to CEOs. So I try to keep current in a lot of what's going on through my mentoring. So it's great to be here, and I just wanted to give you a little bit of background on myself first. So the process I'm going to go through with you, it's a little bit of a process. This is a quick overview. Find out who's there, leverage your network, talk to your advisors, make the founder the main point of contact, cast a wide net, be ready before you reach out, and get creative. So I'm going to spend more time on each one of these points, but that's quickly what we're going to go through. So, any search is the same. You're really looking for it's like looking for a person, looking for a job, looking for anything. It's really research at the beginning is really key. So I think the first thing I would say is cast a very wide net. And I'll talk more about how wide it should be and how to make it wider. But look at the stage your company's at. Are you at a mature stage where you have, Series B, C, D type investors who are looking more to invest in helping you scale? That's one kind of investor. Typically, they write larger checks. Or are you looking to prove your technology, maybe get to revenue? That's a little different, maybe an angel investor or a Series A or B investor where the checks may not be as large, although they can be, but they're looking for a different thing and they understand the stage that you're at as a company. And that is important, that you don't talk to a Series D investor if you need a Series A round accomplished. And I think the other important thing is don't limit your thinking to traditional venture capital firms. Now, they're certainly the normal thing people go to, but angel investors, you could also put kind of family and friends in that category. Institutional investors are investing more in startups these days, and institutional being a company that it may have financial services or financial offerings, but they're willing to put some of their money to work in a startup environment. Family offices is another one where families, some wealthy families, have investing arms, and they're always looking for interesting investments at early stages that are consistent with their philosophy of investing, right? So family offices, again, can be good sources of capital that are long and patient typically in their investments. And then strategic advisors are people in the industry that you're developing your product or solution in. I'll talk a little bit more about how you might engage with them. And one resource that we use a lot, I think is very good, is PitchBook, but there's all kinds of organizations, groups, and so on. And, just again, cast a very wide net, a very wide search on who's out there that might do the kind of investing that you need for your business at that time. So once you've got this list, or as you're building the list, I think ask everybody you know. And that's kind of this point one, but, ask your leadership team, ask your board, ask your advisors, ask your current investors, ask anyone you know who they know that might be interested in investing, because ideally a warm introduction by somebody that knows the person you want to meet is always going to serve you better than a cold email coming in from a stranger. So I think anytime you can use a trusted relationship, I call them, it'll save you cold calling efforts and get you closer to an introduction to the person that you want to meet with. And everyone you ask who can't help, ask them for someone that can help, right? So this is kind of like a sales thing. Okay, you're not interested, but who do you know that might be interested? And I think, again, to me, it's like a sales campaign. I've run sales organizations. The goal is often get the meeting, right? So you want to get the meeting with the person, and then you go from there. Then you can tell your story. But with no meeting, there's no money. So I think, again, the goal should be, how do I get as many meetings with as many investors as possible? And then we'll talk about what you do in the meeting in a minute. So leverage your network, expand it, just go as wide and deep as you can. Because let me tell you, it's hard finding money these days. And the wider net you cast, the more likely you're going to find someone that's interested in your company and what you're trying to get invested for. With your trusted advisors, I think a couple things. One I've already mentioned is have them introduce you to their network. But more importantly, an advisor can be really helpful in critiquing and improving your story, or help you tell your story. I have a great example. I have a client who we were doing finance and accounting support for, and I talked to him about his fundraising and where he was, and I knew he needed to raise a round, and I said, hey, would you mind showing me your pitch deck? I'd be happy to critique it and give you some feedback. Well, he sent it to me. It was 120 pages of very narrow engineering speak, high tech, deep knowledge required to understand the deck. And I said to him, nobody's going to want to invest with this deck. He's like, what do you mean? This shows how great we are and everything. And I said, well, it's too long to tell the story, and you need people to understand too much to understand the story. So we worked with him over a month or two, and we got his story down to about 12 or 13 slides. And he said, but Dave, I got to put this 2 slides in from the old deck. I'm like, fine, put those in, but put them in at the end, so that if people have questions about those things, you can then go to those slides. But make it simple, make it understandable. But I think good advisors, are not wedded to the story in the same way you, the entrepreneur, or you, the person in the company, are. Because I think sometimes we get blinders on. Well, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, and everyone would understand this, and everyone would want this. And that may be true, but telling that in a way that an investor can understand is the key. And I think it's important to realize investors have different language, perhaps, than an engineer might have about the technology and how great it is. So telling a story that's easy to tell, easy to remember, really, really important. And we have a number of clients that we help with this, how to tell the story in a simpler, more compelling way, because it's hard to be simple. It's easy to be complicated. You can just put 1 million slides together and talk for 2 hours. They're going to tune you out after 5 minutes. And either the meeting will be over, or you're wasting everybody's time if you can't be crisp and to the point. And so, again, I think this is where your advisors, whoever they may be, technical advisors, business advisors, some of your investors perhaps that want you to help you raise the next round might be good for this, but make sure it's somebody that it has a different point of view or an outside point of view that can look at it from their perspective and give you good feedback from that perspective. And then another thing I think some people lose track of sometimes is who's really reaching out, who's the key person in making this thing happen. And it should always be the founder and or CEO. Often that's the same person, but it could be the two of them if it's in fact two people. But the investors want to hear from who they're investing in. So is it the founder or CEO? That's who they want to hear from, because that's who they're going to vet, or that's who they're going to decide, is this person somebody that we want to bet on or make an investment in and see what happens. So if someone else has a strong relationship with that potential investor, that's fine for them to reach out, but they should be reaching out to make an appointment with the CEO. And I think another thing I've seen this happen, and every investor I've talked to has said they don't like it, is getting a third party involved in pitching the business, because they feel like, number one, it's a waste of money, because if they invest with you, some of their money is going to go to that investment banker rather than directly to the business. And they just feel like they'd rather deal directly with the company rather than dealing through a third party. So again, maybe when you're in a later round, it may make sense to have a banker, but certainly in the early rounds, bankers are frowned on by investors. And I've, in fact, been told by people they don't take calls from bankers when they're investing in early rounds. So how wide should this net be once you've figured that out? And I think, 100 to 200 is not a bad number. You may say, oh my gosh, Dave, that's too many. But too many for what? Right? And, if you get a yes after your first 10, maybe 100 to 200 was too many. But if you don't get one till number 150, you're going to be glad you have 100 to 200 potential investors. And the first yes is always the hardest, always, always, always the hardest, because everyone's going to say, well, who's your lead? Well, we don't have one. How would you like to be the lead? And so I think you get in this difficult position until you get that lead investor to get the next one. But the nice thing, once you have that one, they will bring others with them often. A lot of times they invest as groups and they have people they like investing with. And so the lead investor is really important, because you get your term sheet, the valuation, the terms and conditions, all that gets settled with that lead investor. And then finding the others is easier, because now they're investing with someone, ideally that they trust, or someone that they know has done the homework and the diligence, so they can rely on that to some degree. So again, I think go as wide as you can and be ready for rejection. I've been with companies that have been rejected 100 times, but still got their funding done because they kept at it. So I think, again, in this environment where funding is harder to come by, I don't think your list can be too long. Again, you may not want to go after all 200 on the same day, but, pick 10 a week or 10 a day or whatever, and just one by one, go through with your reach out to them. The other thing is, before you start reaching out, so you've got this wonderful list. Now what? So, if you know someone or you have somebody that knows someone, obviously a phone call would be my preference, because people, I find, respond better to the phone than they do to an email. I don't know how your inboxes are, but I guarantee you investor inboxes are completely full every day with more than they can get to. So if you have a way to connect with them by the phone first, I would encourage you to do that. And that's probably going to be through some warm introduction by someone. But if you're sending an email to a person, a cold email, you have to do something in that email more than, hi, I'm John Jones, I'm with ABC Technology, and I've got the coolest widget in the world I want you to invest in. They get those emails all the time. So I would encourage you, when you're doing your homework on your list, find out something about that person you're sending the email and make it more personal. Hey, I see you've already invested in company ABC. We're similar to the theme you've been investing in. We think we have the next right thing for that market, and we'd welcome the chance to talk to you about our company and the market. Right now, you're not asking about money. You're like helping them see something that maybe they haven't seen. Obviously, they know you're going to ask for money eventually, but if you can somehow make it about information sharing, it gives you a chance, again, to get the meeting. What you do at the meeting when you get it is up to you. The other thing is, if you do send an email out, I used to do this all the time, is you send an email and say, I'm going to call you next week to set up an appointment. And I get emails like that today. I never get the phone calls because nobody makes them, right? So I think if you just reach out, I hate emails, I get these every day. Oh, are you available for a meeting at 1 o'clock next Wednesday? No, and I'm not going to read the rest of the email. I don't work that way, right? So I think you have to give them a reason. And then, one tool you can use if you want is Calendly to make that available so they can just book a time with you. But I would make it even easier than that, is just say, hey, let me know, I'll reach out to you and we'll set something up. And then I think, again, for these cold calls, it may be useful. You need to be careful about what you put in this deck, because you have to assume if you send it out on a cold call, it can land anywhere. But, a 5 or 6 page deck that tells them enough about the company, and it's more than an email, right? So an email, you don't want to send a book as an email, but I think if you just have a short attachment, what's your value proposition, who are the key people in the company, what are your plans and status? We're product ready, we have our first revenue, we're going to triple the business in the next, whatever those things are. And then what you're looking for, is it, how much do you want and what would you do with it? So be ready. And if it's appropriate, I wouldn't do this all the time because it has a risk of getting out in the market. But if you can put a fairly generic deck that lets people know kind of who you are and what you're looking for, I think that's a good thing. And then get creative. I think too many people think, oh, the only answer is a venture capital firm, but there's other answers out there. And one is with the strategic investors. These are people in the industry that are typically larger companies that invest or work with startups. And I think there's 3 different ways you can engage with them short of asking them for money. One is do some non-recurring engineering work for you. It's the same as funding in a way. You can work on a feature for them or a version for them that gives them an advantage in the marketplace. Some companies will pay for that if you have something that solves a strategic investor's problem. The other 2 things you can look at is maybe a go-to-market alliance. Hey, will you sell our product with your product? Or can we sell your product with our product? And then a technology alliance would be more like setting up APIs or setting up a way so the 2 companies' products or services would work well together. And I think people don't think about those things, but that increases your value if you have a relationship with a company like that. And when I was with HP and Hitachi, the companies I was with before I started doing all my advising work, we always look for those things. And we rarely invested, but we look for opportunities to partner with folks. And then if we liked that company, we'd often end up buying them eventually. So that's kind of the good and the bad. The other 2 things to think about is venture debt is a good thing for some people. It can be expensive, but it's a lot less expensive than equity. And it's a similar conversation that you might have with a venture firm, but I find the venture debt folks are more willing to take meetings. They're more interested in what you might have to say than the venture guys. Now, some venture debt folks will not invest unless you have a venture capital investment already, but there are some that if you have enough cash and enough runway would be willing to invest. And again, they take a small piece, like 1-2% of the company is all. So you don't have the dilution impact you have with raising around with ventures. And then again, the family office, another idea, maybe another high net worth individual, maybe he invests or she invests or their family invests. That's another thing I think. Again, not your traditional investor you'd look for, but Why not? So in summary, do your research, build out a strong story, get a big list, reach out to a lot of people, reach out again, and keep reaching out. I don't mean to say it this way, but you can't give up. You just need to keep going. And if there's a really good investor, reach out to them 3 or 4 times to try to get a hold of them. Try different angles, try different emails, try a phone call. And most of all, be creative. Don't go down this narrow path. Listen to the feedback you get, if you get some along the way, and adjust as necessary. But I think creativity is a key part of getting funding in this environment. So thank you for your time today. If you would like to reach out to me, you can scan that QR code that will give you my contact information. Thanks for the chance to speak. And James, I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, thank you very much. In listening to you, I have to say it did remind me of Shark Tank.
Oh, yeah. I hadn't thought about that, but it is that way in some ways. Yeah.
And in listening to you, it reminds me of the arguments that these people presented to be convincing to, some of them to invest. One of my questions is, what are the key factors, the key pieces of information that will turn the investor on, no matter whom you're talking to? What is it going to make them believe, aha, there's a future here?
I think, James, one of the main things for me is execution proof. So in other words, everybody has great ideas, or they wouldn't have gotten where they got to. But what I look for is, what did you say you were going to do? And then what did you actually do? And showing a history of that, I think investors are always looking for an investment where they can rely on that company to deliver what they promise to deliver. And I've worked with companies that can never deliver what they promise, and they cannot raise money. And then I've worked with other ones where they always deliver what they promise. They have no trouble. So I think that's probably the biggest thing, is a demonstrated track record of delivering to milestones along the way. And that can be built in. When I have people build decks, I always have them build that in as, here's our timeline and what we said we were going to do and what we actually did. I think that's really important. It's credibility, right?
Yeah, and also, how much does it cost to make your product?
Right.
How much money do you make? And so on and so forth. And one factor I think does play a role, which is marketing. A lot of people who go there have a way of marketing their product and themselves to make them more convincing. I think if you can do that credibly, why not market what you're doing?
That's right. And that's telling the story to me. I could just put marketing in place of telling the story.
Yeah.
How do you tell the story in a way that catches people's imagination, right? It's almost, I love good stories. Oh, I get that. Oh, that's so exciting. Tell me more. Yeah. And then I hear other stories. I'm like, I fall asleep, right? And those stories I don't get too excited about.
Yeah, exactly. It's extremely interesting. And, it always puts you, somebody who's trying to create something, put them on the spot. But that's the way to go. You have to be able to confront those who could possibly help you.
That's right. That's right. And, the other thing I'd say is, be very, I'm going to use the word honest, have integrity in what you say, because that's the other thing. If you get caught out in a lie, you're over. That's it. And I'm not suggesting people lie, but it's just knowing your facts, being clear on those facts, because that gives you more credibility. Again, what's happening in your business. And if I ask somebody like, well, how profitable are you? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? How could you not know, right? Or how much, you said earlier, James, how much is it going to cost to go from where you are to that product in the market? I don't know. Again, so I think that's what I mean by truthfulness, or being complete in your knowledge. Really, really important, because if you don't have any credibility on what's happening, why would anyone invest, right?
Yeah, and somebody's inventing a whole new product, and somebody might ask at one point, do you have a patent?
Right. That's another good one. Yep, that's a good one.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for this presentation. I think there are many business starters who should listen very carefully to what you say, because Those are key issues.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
again, I think it's not rocket science, but I think sometimes people just need to slow down and realize it's a complicated process that takes time and effort. Maybe that's the last thing I'll say, James, is it's not a quick, if you got people knocking on your door, you won't need to listen to this presentation. But if you don't have people knocking on your door, it's a long process. It can take 6 to 9 months or even longer to raise capital today. And I don't underestimate the level of effort required.
For sure. Well, got to believe in your business.
That's right. That's right.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your presentation. Extremely helpful. And I hope a lot of people will listen to what you're saying.
Thanks so much, James, and appreciate the chance to be here and speak with your audience today. It's a real pleasure.
Great to meet you, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.